talk about your pain, can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity, and make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste, the therapist. Let's go.
All right. Hello. Hi, beautiful people. For people that are watching me on the replay, thank you so much for watching me. I appreciate you. If you have never been in any of my lives before, my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. And I come on, I talk about things that we go through, and then I kind of help people think about ways that they can process it. We are currently streaming on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, everywhere. I use a platform called StreamYard that allows me to do that. And last week we talked about procrastination. So if procrastination is something that you struggle with, definitely check out that conversation where I talked about like why it's a possibility you're procrastinating, and I help you kind of walk through steps to help you kind of change the way that you are operating. Today we're talking about environment. Actually, let me just put it on the bottom so people can know. So we're talking about the impact of environment on mental health. And so these conversations that I do here are also on the platform, on the podcasting platform. So it's a way for you to listen to it in different ways. So even if you're not able to watch it on video, you have that option. So mental health is something that's always been a topic that I feel like has been taboo for people. And the moment I've learned about the reasons why we struggle, and I learned about some of the ways that we can work on it ourselves, I've made it my mission to kind of share with everyone else on how that works, because a lot of times we don't understand how it works. I think that we only know medicine and we only know therapy. We don't know, like, what can I do in my environment, or what are the things, some of the things that are causing people stress. They don't even realize it's related to their environment. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is thinking about the different ways that our environment could be creating harm for us. So when you think about environment, the environmental factors, there's the physical factors, such as pollution, working conditions, and weather conditions, right? I know during the pandemic, a lot of people ended up in the poor neighborhoods where there wasn't a lot of trees, where maybe they had trucks passing through a lot, where the pollution was bad. A lot of people, they have a lot of more medical conditions because of just the environment. I had no idea how much environmental justice was needed for some of the areas. And unfortunately, in some of the poor areas, if you look at the poor areas and where the lowest socioeconomic status and where the socioeconomic status is high, you'll see more trees in that area. The more trees and greenery there is, the better like breathing quality you have, the less like some of your medical issues that you have are directly related to the environment. Asthma, I'm sure in the poor communities, you're seeing asthma is a huge thing that's coming up. So your environmental factors include the quality of air, your working conditions, and then social factors. So it says such as abuse, poor support, and toxic relationships. When I think about abuse, and I know that some people are used to people talking to them any kind of way, whether it's your parent, your kid, or your partner, and you normalize it. I'm always flabbergasted when people are like kind of replaying a story, a situation that happened, a conversation, or their childhood, and they talk about it just matter of factly, as if they're just reading a book or retelling a story. And then when they're talking about some of the ways that they're struggling, and I make the connection to the way that people are talking to them or the way they've been talked to, they're always shocked that that's part of a reason why they may be struggling, right? So when you think about environmental factors, some of the people in your life and the way that they treat you, and when you think about toxic relationships, because people say the word toxic relationships all the time, it's where one party is getting one up on you, where uh, you're not. It's not equal. It's not an equal relationship where there's a give and take, right? And a lot of times, people are so used to being used that they don't even realize the type. And this is not just intimate relationships. This is with friendships as well, especially family, right? Family is a huge one. You've been with your family your entire life. So you may not even realize that this is causing you harm because it's all you know. You only know harm. Some people have only known harm their entire life. So to be able to point it out is hard because they don't know any other way. And so because you don't know any other way, a lot of times that's the way you tend to treat yourself as well, right? So when you think about these environmental factors, and then the other factors is lack of stimulation, lack of green outdoor spaces, which I just talked about, and like messy environments. So your desk where you work, or your room space, right? Like if things are in disarray, you'll be surprised at like the clutter that you're around. Can You create clutter in your head, right? It's hard for you to think straight. It messes with your mental health. So these are some of the environments that are you're involved in that you may not even pay attention to, that are reasons why your mental health could be at stake. So now I want to share with you some solutions, like how do I create a positive environment for my mental health. My platform and everything that I do, I started doing this in 2018. I recognize the lack of resources. I recognize that people only look at psychology and therapy as the only factors to work on their mental health. I realize there are so many factors that are affecting our mental health that we can actually start working on right now today, right? Like I said, if your room is in disarray and everything is everywhere, that's literally something that you can start to work on today. Every little step counts when it comes to how do I work on my mental health. There's not one magic fix. I was on a show last week, and one of the questions was like, is there like what can I do to make this go away? Like what can I do to have better mental health? Like what's the one thing? And it's like there's not one thing. There's not one thing that you're missing. It's like everything, all of the factors are important when it comes to your mental health. And when I talk about the factors, when you think about this wellness wheel that I just put up for people that are watching the video component, I'll read it for people listening on audio, but your emotional, environmental, financial, intellectual, like your stimulation with your intellect, occupational, your physical, and your social and spiritual. So all of these things matter. Like, if your financial part of the will is well and you're making all this money, do you think like, okay, all my problems go away? No, there's just so many other factors that affect our mental health. And today we're talking about how the environmental factors, the things that we're exposed to, the people that we're around, like how is it affecting our mental health? Because if I'm giving let me say my mom a ride home every day from work, and every day she's cussing me out on my way home, I have the choice to not give her a ride home, right? I can say, like, I don't want you to treat me this way. Like, I can start my process of relieving my stress today. Will it be hard if I've always accepted the fact that she cusses me out on the way home? Absolutely, it's going to be hard. But is it necessary to put my healing in my hands? Absolutely. Waiting for her to stop cussing me out just doesn't make any sense, right? So let's just talk about the ways in which we can work on changing our environment. Like, how can I create a positive environment to work on my mental health? Because that's something that's so important. So the first thing I wrote is understanding the importance of having a positive mental health environment, right? The second thing, identifying stress and triggers in your environment. That's important. If you're not understanding some of the ways that you are being triggered, how are you going to begin to work on your mental health? If I don't understand, like, and a lot of times, let's say I'm going to stick with the example. Mind you, my mother does not, I've never heard my mother cuss a day in my life. But I'm going to stick with that example. I'm driving my mom home, and she's cussing me out, and I've always dealt with that going driving her home, right? If I if I'm not aware that my heart starts racing or I get tight, or after I drop her off, now I'm anxious and I'm overwhelmed, right? But if I'm not identifying that, oh, it's when I pick her up and drop her home, that's what's happening, right? If I'm not identifying that, how do I begin to work on it, right? If I don't realize that my coworker talks to me a certain way, and I'm not doing anything about it, like how do I begin to work on that, right? So really thinking about how can I identify stresses and triggers. And another way to think about triggers, like, because sometimes intellectually you may not realize you're being triggered, right? Because I realize that that's the case. So pay attention to your body's response, right? Because if you're asking me, if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, well, how do I know what my triggers are? Pay attention to your body too, because you may not even realize you're being triggered. But sometimes, like some people, like may do different things with their hands. You may feel your stomach turning, like if you were about to get in trouble. You feel your stomach turning. You may feel your back hurt, right? Some people get back. A big one too is migraines, like headaches. So pay attention to your body, and a good way to start to check in with understanding your stressors is to like check in with yourself every day. If you're checking in with yourself every day and working on renewing your mind, like, okay, what happened today? Like, oh yeah, when I drove my mom home, I remember that's when my mood changed. Or when she called. Sometimes a call can change people's mood and they don't even realize it, but they keep picking up the phone for people that are driving them insane. And it's like, I have control over whether or not I'm going to pick up the phone. Let's just stick with the mom example, because I know that's a harder relationship for people to work on creating boundaries with. But if the phone's ringing, I can choose to pick up or not. It's hard to not choose to pick up if you're so used to picking up. That's a hard thing to do, but it's a very necessary thing to do, right? So really being mindful of what you are choosing to do when these triggers and stresses are coming up. The third thing is implementing strategies for a healthy mental health, right? So if we're sticking with the example of having a mom who you may be struggling with, where it's kind of like, okay, when she calls, like I know the conversation starts to take a turn for the worse, right? So I'm going to make sure that let's say you struggle with saying no, but I'm going to just call her when I'm going to work, because it's only going to be 10 minutes or 15 minutes to work, right? So it's like, oh, I got to go, right? If I struggle with the start of boundaries, or if it's like, if you are ready to start speaking up, right? Hey, like, just so you know, I don't appreciate the way you're speaking to me. And if you continue speaking to me this way, like, I'm going to have to hang up the phone respectfully, right? A lot of people will look at trying to put boundaries up with their parent, especially, as them being disrespectful, right? And so you continue to take the abuse because it's all you know. And you have to be mindful of, when I'm trying to work on change, like my system will have a hard time with it, but it's okay because I need me to be okay, right? And eventually, my system will learn that this is the new way that we're starting to operate, right? I got to teach my system how to operate. And in order to do that, I got to deal with a little bit of discomfort, right? So start to implement thinking about thinking about mental health strategies to help you work on the situations that you recognize are triggering. The fourth one, I talk about this all the time. I should do a whole like segment on it because it's so important, right? Establishing boundaries to protect your mental well-being. Boundaries are there to protect you, right? And it's something that, like my friend, I always quote him when Sean Marshall, he had a post. It said, creating boundaries will expose the toxicity in relationships, right? When you start saying like, oh, I can't do this, and people are like, wait, why can't you? Like, I don't understand. You've always done it before. You know, they start challenging you on what you say you need to do. I don't have to give you a reason why I said no, right? But even some people may give reasons and people will still challenge them. And so you have to really create a boundary. So let's stick with the example of driving my mom home from work and she's cussing me out, right? If that's a situation where we're sticking with the parent situation, my boundary is I'm no longer going to allow you to be in my car and speak to me that way. If you want this ride from work, you're going to have to be respectful, right? Like I'm willing to give you a ride from work, but I'm not willing to be disrespected. So many people have never been told about what boundaries look like, right? I love like hugging and like giving my kids hugs and stuff. My son, he didn't want no parts of it. And I like, can I give you a hug? He says no. I'd be like, okay. Do I feel a little sad because I want to give him a hug? Absolutely. But also, like, I'm respecting his boundaries at 13, right? Like, some people were forced to give a family member a kiss, and maybe that was uncomfortable for them, right? And so when you're not taught about boundaries as a child, of course you're an adult without boundaries, right? And then if you're trying to start boundaries and you've never been told about how it works, of course you're going to feel like you're doing something wrong when you're trying to implement it, right? Your system is not familiar with the environment. The same way, I've never had a dog but I've had a cat. So when you have an animal that comes to your environment for the first time, of course they're going to be all over the place. They're going to be nervous. A cat, they're not going to know where the litter box is right away. You're going to have to acclimate them to the environment. The same way that happens with animals when they come into a new environment, the same thing that happens with your mind and your system, right? It's not that you're not capable of creating boundaries. It's not that you're always going to be uncomfortable with saying no and taking care of yourself. But if it's something that's new, it's going to be something that will feel uncomfortable until you get acclimated, and then it'll start to feel okay. And so that's an important thing I want people to remember, because the reason why people struggle with having boundaries and sticking to them is because it feels like they're doing something wrong. So I'm here to tell you, yeah, it will feel like you're doing something wrong, but we're not going to go according to feelings. We're going to go according to what we need, right? That's something that's really important to understand. All right, we got two more. Um, Seeking professional help and support when needed. I'm always gonna advocate for therapy. I'm a whole therapist. I believe in therapy. So much stigma around it, which is unfortunate. But I also know that therapists are human and people too. So I know some people have been harmed by their experience over the years, and sometimes people just can't find the right fit. So support is not just therapy. Support is community, right? Support is, maybe you do have somebody in your life that um, is you're able to have a conversation with, and it's reciprocated, right? Support is maybe a support group, right? One of the good things that came out the pandemic is people getting comfortable with online platforms. There are a ton of online platforms where there are support groups and reading clubs. There's so many different things that you can find online. Maybe I'm going to start listening to this podcast on how to create boundaries, or I'm going to read this book about setting boundaries, setting peace, right? That's a real book that I read. Maybe that's going to be the thing that I go, but you can't do this alone, right? And if you're somebody that may not have actual people in your personal life that you know, which is possible because we all grow at different lengths. I wish it was kind of like, oh, okay, I'm about to get my life together. And then you could bring the people in your life along the journey with you. Sometimes they're not ready to do that. Some people are comfortable with where they are. And so that means that it feels like a lonely journey because you don't have the same people in your life as you're on it. But that doesn't mean that you can't rally around and create supportive systems in your life, right? Um, Maintaining your mental health environment for long-term well-being, that is something that is important. So as you're thinking about your plan on how do I create a positive mental health environment for myself, creating something that's going to allow you to be disciplined, right? So when you think about long term, right? Because it's not just if I'm allowing my mom to cuss me out on the way home, I'm sure that other areas in my life, people may be taking advantage of me, right? So I'm going to be mindful and look at all of the environments. My boundaries are going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Non-negotiable, right? They're going to be so non-negotiable. The same way, like you go to work And if you go to work for 2 weeks and that 2 week check comes and it's like, oh, we ain't got your check, you're gonna keep coming to work every 2 weeks and not getting your check. That's non-negotiable for you. Like when it comes to like the tangible things of like exchange of like work and money, those are non-negotiable. You don't have to talk to unless people don't understand the value of money, right? And they just love what they do and they don't need the money. That's different. But I promise you that if you don't get paid when you work, you're not going to go to work. That's non-negotiable, right? Because how am I going to survive? I always tell people we got survival down pat. Like we could survive like the blink of an eye. We understand it. The living part we don't got down pat. The living part we struggle with. So when it comes to the living part, you got to be mindful of part of it is the discipline that you're creating for yourself, where you're making your boundaries non-negotiable, right? A lot of times it's like about your boundaries are in pencil where it's like, okay, I'll erase it here, I'll erase it there, right? No, you got to put it in pen, like make it permanent, not pen because there's whiteout. You got to use permanent marker and be like, nope, this is it, this is the line. And unfortunately, those people with these permanent marker boundaries, they're looked at as being difficult or challenging from people that don't understand boundaries, right? You've heard people talk about them where they don't allow certain things and that's their boundary, and that should be okay because that's their stuff. And a lot of times the boundaries that you're creating for yourself, you're not harming other people, but people are no longer benefiting from you, right? So of course they're going to try to get more, right? If they're not able to benefit from you anymore. So really being mindful that you're creating discipline so that what you're doing becomes long term and not just for that moment. Not because I'm so tired. Like sometimes people get to their breaking point and they're so tired, and then that's when they say no. And then the next thing you know, they feel bad that they said no that day. So the next time they're going to say yeah. It can't be because I'm at my breaking point, I say no. It has to be like, even when I'm not tired, if this is my day to rest, because I know I got to do a double tomorrow and I just did a double and this is my day to rest, it's non-negotiable. Make your boundaries non-negotiable. And then the last thing I'll say is prioritizing your mental health in all aspects of your life. That's important. Really thinking about your entire life, like what you're exposing yourself to. When you think about environment, look at the internet and social media as part of it, because it is in your environment. Like, what am I looking at and how is it affecting me? Especially like first thing in the morning. You can't control the news that you're seeing. There's so many things that are happening in the news, people are recording things that we would have. I'm 41. I didn't see live shootings. I didn't see people getting murdered on the internet. I read about it. Reading about it and seeing it is two different things. And even if you curate your timeline to be more of a healthy, positive one, there's a chance that some of that stuff may come up on your feed. And so really being mindful, like, how is that affecting me? People don't realize and then it becomes like like they say, like when you eat hot like chips, like it's like you get addicted, you want more. You'll be surprised, like some of the dark news, the things that are happening now, you'll be surprised like how addictive it is. Where now you're looking at that happened and there's, oh wait, they lived where, and you start doing all this research about dark stuff and not realizing like you're getting depressed just reading about the situation. And it's not, and some people, I need to know the news. I need to know what's going on. Okay, that's fine. Give yourself a time limit. Don't be on the news all day. Like one of the things older people do, unfortunately, is they will sit in front of that TV and watch the news. Like my grandmother in Georgia will call me about something. If she sees something, because she is she is in front of that TV watching the news all day. And it's just not healthy for our mindset. So if anybody don't know this, I know my listeners that have been listening forever, the mind believes what we tell it and what we expose it to, right? So even though you may not be in like bad environments or bad places, if you're reading things, if you're hearing things, right? If you're not giving yourself medicine of positive information, right? My mind is all like, I watch trash TV. I'll watch a drama, right? But at like baseline, when I think about like medicine, when I think about what I'm giving myself every day, I'm constantly exposing myself to things that are helping me grow, right? And a lot of times we're not doing that. We are complaining, we are feeling miserable, but then we're not taking our power back by looking at the steps we can take to change. And so this like episode that we're doing right now about the environment and looking at what you may have control over to change your environment. Can I look at like me, like even listening to this episode, that's you giving yourself new information that's going to help your brain work on reframing. But it can't just stop at a podcast episode, right? It can't just stop at a book. It has to be something that's intentional that you're doing on a daily basis. You're shifting your mindset. And so a lot of times you feel stuck because you're not giving your mind new information. Your mind only has the old information. It only has the trauma. It only has the ways that you were put down and let down over the years. And so that's the mindset or the lens that it looks through. But if you start to work on changing your mind, like when you think about the lens, like if my glasses was dirty and it looked like everything was fuzzy all the time, as soon as I clean my glasses, I'm like, oh, it looks clear. Look at the sun, it looks nice. Look at the flowers, they're pretty. Like, oh, I thought they was looking a little rough, right? So a lot of us have a really faulty sense of life because all right, we need to clean our lenses. So, like we need to give ourselves new information. It's not that life isn't hard. It's not that things that happened didn't happen, but I can't control the past. I can't not only can I not control the past, I can never go back to the past and rechange it, even if it were things that I did that I could have done differently. And a lot of times it's not even always about what people did to you, it's about what you didn't do that you're holding on to. And it's just keeping you in this vicious cycle. And so if you're mindful of changing your environment, it's also changing what you're allowing into your mind. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this makes sense. If anything I ever say resonates for you, I always tell people understand that you have power to change, and but you have to have faith to believe in yourself. And when you have faith and when you start believing in yourself, like no one can ever take that away from you. But you really got to start like with the now, like be in the moment. Start where you are and use what you can. That's the message. So thank you so much. I'm gonna say bye to TikTok and bye to you guys.